Let's play Dungeons and Dragons.
Hi there, my name is Matthew Bickel, and today I want to talk to you about Session Prep versus World Prep in Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. Now, whether you are running a module that you've written yourself, or maybe you're running a game that is from a campaign that you've bought from the DM's Guild or from Wizards of the Coast, regardless, you're going to be doing some amount of work at prepping each session, and maybe even prepping the world in general, getting ready for the game and running it for the party that you're going to be playing with. Whether you're just pulling up stat blocks for monsters or looking up the names and places for NPCs and relative locations, you're going to be doing some amount of work in between every session. And of course, if you're prepping the world, then you're going to be doing a lot of legwork ahead of time, getting governments and politics and countries and things like that ready for your party to get involved with and immerse themselves with completely. And of course, you want your game to be fun and exciting, immersive, but you don't want to get bogged down and burned out by just incessant prepping for hours and hours in between every session. It can become exhausting. And with all of the really amazing Dungeons & Dragons live streams that you can find online today, most notable of which is probably Critical Role, you gotta ask yourself, how much time are these guys and gals spending in between each and every session getting ready? Because their worlds are incredible, they're big, they're immersive, there's political structures, incredible NPCs, big monsters, sometimes classes of monsters that these DMs created themselves, maybe with the help of some of their player characters. How much time, work are they spending in it? And what was astounding to me when I first started getting into this hobby is that most of these DMs, when asked, said they didn't spend a heck of a lot of time in between sessions prepping for the upcoming game. A lot of the stuff they said that they would just kind of wing it. And I thought that was just wild and crazy. I didn't understand how until I started thinking about and realizing the differences between session prep and world prep. If I could get kind of technical, I suppose, I think that the amount of time and effort you're going to spend in session prep between sessions is largely dictated by how much time and effort you put in ahead of time into your world prep. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a completed full world that you have in front of you in a campaign guide that you bought or one that you created yourself, then you already have all the moving pieces. You already have all the NPCs, you have the continents, you have the political structures, you have the magic items, you have all this stuff already there laid out on the table in writing, and your player characters are just going to interact with what's already there. Maybe you have to add a few new things or put in some twists. Maybe you as a DM have to react to your player characters' choices, what they choose to do, because doggone it, if they choose to do something you didn't predict, well, you can't just say no. So that's sort of the session prep that you'll be doing if you have a complete world. But if your world is not complete, or if you didn't take the time to look ahead and get things ready, then you are not only winging it, but you're winging it with nothing in front of you. You don't have any of the characters, the places, the politics, anything. So you just have to make up all the stuff as you go along, and it is a heck of a lot of stuff to try to figure out and make up, especially if you have a deep overarching plot. If you're running a one shot, maybe if you're an experienced DM, you're a good storyteller, you've been doing this for a while, maybe you could just make up as you go along a great one shot. But a big overarching campaign that your player characters are going to be playing for 5, 10, 15, 20 levels worth of gameplay, which is hours and hours, probably months, maybe even years of getting together and playing the game, you got to spend some time making that prep world, preparing the world for your characters and for your party. And that's the big differences between session prep and world prep. Get the world prep, you get everything ready ahead of time, and then all you have to do is just move the different pieces and parts that you've already created in and out whenever it's appropriate, based on whatever your party, whatever your player characters choose to do. So, that being said, what are some different tips and tricks that might make session prep and world prep a little bit easier and a little bit more exciting for you as a DM and for your players to interact with when you're playing? Well, here are a couple ideas for session prep and a couple ideas for world prep as well. So, session prep. Whether it's a pre-written campaign or a game that you've written up yourself, go ahead and read ahead for each session, whatever's coming up next. If you know that your party is heading to a particular city or wants to speak to some specific individuals, or is likely going to make some, whatever, you as a DM probably have some ideas of what they're going to do. Your party will surprise you, and when they do, it's okay. If you're not prepared for it, do the best you can. It'll be awesome. A lot of the most memorable moments happen when the unexpected happens. But you as a DM, you can go ahead, look ahead, what's coming up soon, and make a session outline, basically. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to railroad your players. Do not railroad your players. You never, ever want to take away their agency, their freedom to choose what they want to do. One of your main jobs as a dungeon master is to preserve and encourage your party's agency to choose whatever they want to do. But by making an outline for the session, you can have the important and relevant NPCs, cities, politics, the state of affairs in those cities, monsters, things like that already drawn up and ready. Any kind of important plot points. That way you don't forget. You can make sure you remember those important things that you want your players to interact with in the upcoming session. Another thing you can do, number 2, is try to have interesting and appropriate things happening in the game world around your players as they travel about on their adventures. Let's say they're going into a town. Is there nothing going on? Or maybe it's the fall harvest and there's a big kind of celebration or festival's about to happen because there was a bumper crop this season. Maybe a noble's birthday is about to take place and there are celebrations being prepared, but he's not really well loved, and so there's a lot of murmuring going on in the lower echelons of the citizenry that don't much care for this tyrant. Or maybe a Robin Hood-like figure, a criminal in the eyes of the state, but a hero in the eyes of the people, has been captured and charged for his crimes. These sort of things can make the city and the world that your players are playing in and participating in feel that much more real, that much more exciting and immersive, and it can lead to interesting side plots and side quests that may not have otherwise happened. Another thing you can do, number 3, remember that minor details matter. Now, that doesn't mean I want you to get bogged down with minor details for every character and every location, because then you're just going to get buried in a bunch of minor details, and it's going to, all your time and all your effort is going to be taken up in stuff that doesn't really affect the overarching plot. But maybe you can pick a thing or two for every session to have a minor, interesting detail, or maybe 4 or 5 things per city that are interesting little details. Maybe the town crier has a loud, boisterous voice, but also has a lisp when he speaks, so every announcement is harder for you to understand. Or maybe the local tavern has a bunch of interesting and silly, cute phrases up on the walls, sort of like Roosters, the restaurant and bar. Whatever. Pick interesting things like that will add character and flavor, maybe even realism, to your game world and to what your characters are going to be interacting with. That will make it a little bit more real, a little more immersive, and more memorable for your players. Now, a couple tips for world prep real quick. Remember, give yourself plenty of time. World prep is a big undertaking. Don't underestimate it. Making a world, especially if you're wanting to make something that's going to be, a years-long campaign, that world is going to be big, it's going to be immersive, there are going to be, political structures and figures and geography and history and lore, and if you're a pantheon of gods and all sorts of crazy, really involved big things that take a lot of time to nail down, figure out, and you're probably going to be going over the ideas multiple times. Now, that didn't quite work, try again. That didn't quite work, try again. It takes a while to get these things really nailed down and figured out the way that you want it to be. So don't, unless you have to, don't promise a certain time frame to your friends like, oh, well, I'll have it ready by next month. Maybe you will, but maybe you won't. Why put that extra pressure on yourself and confine yourself to a deadline when you could just take your time, enjoy the creative process of making a game world, and once you have it ready, then presenting it to your friends, presenting it to the party that you'll be playing with, and have it really the way you want it to be. It might not be perfect. Chances are things still won't go exactly the way you planned because we're all dealing with each other and we're all crazy. But man, it's so good to have a satisfying big world that you've created, instead of, you present it early and then every week you're always, backpedaling, trying to fix little errors, or there's details that aren't filled out over here. And so you're, between every session, you're spending 2 or 3, 4 hours just trying to get ready for the next session. It's a lot of work. Take the time ahead of time to prep the world. And remember, number 2, have fun while you're doing this. You never want that your hobby that you took up because you enjoy it. You don't want your hobby to turn into a chore that you dread, that you avoid, that you don't want to do. It's on your to-do list, and it kind of makes its way down to the bottom because you'd rather be washing dishes than prepping the game world. If that's the case, if prepping this world is becoming a chore, already is a chore, it might be time to take a break, take a breather, do some things that you enjoy, and maybe get a friend or two that you really trust involved. Bounce some ideas off of them and see, maybe you have writer's block and you just need to, have a breakthrough in that area. Maybe you just need to take some time and do things that you enjoy, and then be able to rekindle your love of the game. Whatever the case, take care of yourself and take your time and make sure you're still having fun while creating the game world. And number 3, I'd say, don't be afraid to use cliche ideas. Of course, you want to have original ideas in your work, in the world you made, especially if you're wanting to market this in any way. Then you want to have original ideas. You don't want to be, copying things that other people have done all the time. But Star Wars doesn't own the idea, the bad guy is the hero's father. And Lord of the Rings doesn't own the idea of, destroy the evil artifact. These are really cool, interesting ideas. We love these movies. We love these stories. And a lot of times we fantasize about what it'd be like to be those characters in these stories. We wonder, what would it be like to be Samwise or Aragorn or Eowyn? What would it be like to be Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia? Now, your players have the opportunity to live out those sorts of fantasies in your game. So don't be afraid to use those cliches. Don't exclusively stick to cliches, but if you find yourself using one, that's okay. Chances are your players, your friends, will really dig it. They'll get into it, and maybe they'll just go exactly along with the trope, and they'll, kind of Luke Skywalker, be stunned by the big reveal. Maybe they'll just completely blow away your expectations. Who knows? But don't be afraid to use those cliches. They're really cool. They're really fun. And your players will geek out getting to live out these sort of fantasy situations that they've only ever seen in film up till your game. Obviously, there is tons more that we could talk about with session prep and world prep, but I'm afraid we're out of time for today. So before we go, let me ask you this. What are some tips and tricks you have for session prep or world prep? And what's your favorite campaign that you ever either made or ran? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, take care, have fun, and may the dice always roll in your favor. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like, subscribe, and click that notification bell. That way you don't miss a single video. Also, if you have any thoughts about today's video or have an idea for a future video, please comment below. Thanks again. Take care. We'll see you next time. So, as you enter the cave, the already humid air takes on an extra moist and pungent mildewy smell. Looking to the left and to the right, your lantern barely illuminates the cave. You can't even see the cave walls or the ceiling above you. Suddenly, as you begin to walk further in, you feel a droplet on your head. A second droplet. You look up, and to your horror, you see a giant spider with webbing wrapped around its long, spiny legs descending from above toward you, attempting to scoop you up into its grasp. Roll a dexterity saving throw.